So intravenous stem cells or intravenous exosomes are being used a lot for a variety of neurodegenerative conditions, autoimmune conditions, chronic pain, chronic inflammation. There's so many different things that are being done for. There's a recent trial done for inflammatory bowel disease, which is a really terrible condition.
Yeah.
And right now, the only really medications are like methotrexate or immunosuppressants.
Carnivore diet.
Carnivore diet. It does work, actually.
Yeah.
But not everyone's going to stick to it.
Yeah, right.
And
it's a hard diet.
And a lot of doctors don't really know about it, so they're not going to recommend it to their patients.
Yeah.
So patients have to self-educate, right?
Yeah.
And so instead of just suppressing your immune system, what the intravenous stem cells do is they do what's called immunomodulation. So they actually reset or repair your immune system from a pro-inflammatory state to an anti-inflammatory state.
And is that the exosomes or the stem cells per se?
It's more the stem cells. So stem cells have a strong immunomodulatory effect. The exosomes don't have a strong immunomodulation. So that's why you have to do intravenous stem cells if you want to treat something systemic autoimmune conditions. And there's trials done where patients have actually gone into remission. And that's incredible to see because...
Yeah, you've treated MS?
We have, but MS is much more tricky because it's not just, there is an autoimmune component to it, but then there's a lot of other components to it. And that's where it becomes, you have to take a holistic approach. So the way we're going to treat MS, which we're working on, is we're going to have the second generation of stem cells. So what that means is instead of just using umbilical cord stem cells, we create what are called gene-edited stem cells. So we can actually take, so this is what Professor Yamanaka in Japan, he won a Nobel Prize in 2014 for what's called discovery of induced pluripotent stem cells, iPSCs. So what he discovered was that you could take any somatic cell in your body, like a muscle, a skin cell, and you can reprogram it using genetic reprogramming and turn it back into an embryonic stem cell state.
Oh, yeah. Right.
So that's
so to revert to an earlier form, essentially?
Yeah. So I like to call it the Yamanaka stem cell. And basically, it's a pretty crazy discovery if you think about it.
Yeah.
The fact that your body has this almost innate ability to go back to like an infant state. But you just have to overexpress certain transcription factors to do that. And so that discovery was pretty incredible.
You know, the immune system does that too, is that when it's mutating, when it's adapting to the presence of a new virus or a bacteria, it'll produce more and more accurate gripping mechanisms, like at the cellular level, but it stores representations of the ones that were part of the developmental sequence. So you can imagine that an immune cell is trying to get purchase on a bacteria. It'll sort of go like this first, right? It's not doing it very well, but it'll stick a bit. And then what sticks a bit varies, and then it'll stick a bit better. And then that'll vary, and then it'll stick a bit better, like that. Well, then if the thing mutates, this grip might not work, but this one might. And so the information is still stored. And if this one doesn't work, well, this one might. So it stores that developmental. So there's more early variability and less fine accuracy. There's a trade-off, right? And it sounds like the same thing is happening with the stem cells, is that they'll differentiate into their final form, which is specialized, but that the possibility for earlier forms with more potential is reserved.
Exactly.
Yeah, you know, the same thing seems to happen with regards to junk DNA. So I had a friend tell me, for example, if you breed fruit flies and you breed them so that they don't have eyes, you can do that. You can alter them genetically so they don't have eyes. And then you take the blind fruit flies and you let them breed amongst themselves for 7 or 8 generations, the eyes will come back because the genome takes information out of the junk DNA and rebuilds the eyes. And so even in the DNA itself, there seems to be additional information stored so that the system can revert to an earlier stage of development and then progress forward again. So,
and that's really what I believe is you have 3.2 trillion cells or so in your body, and I believe they're working for you, but we have to figure out and give it the right signals so that you can heal disease. And that's what regenerative medicine, the promise of it is really about, which is that we can use customized cell and gene therapy to restore your body back to a previous state. And that's the era we're finally in. It took a while to get here, but you see how there's all these interesting almost clues from fruit flies, from the immune system that tell us that maybe this is possible. And now we're just trying to piece that together using next generation cell therapeutics.
So can you distinguish, let's speak more generally for a moment, can distinguish between regenerative medicine per se and medicine as it's commonly practiced. And it sounds like the regenerative field is much newer, and you're obviously at the forefront of that. But how do you distinguish what you do from what physicians typically do?
Well, I think the big narrative shift that's hopefully going to happen is instead of giving pills for chronic disease, we want to be giving cells. And what that means is we can make customized cells now to treat chronic disease. Traditional medicine's amazing when it comes to acute care, right? If you get a fracture, you go to the hospital, phenomenal. Where our surgeons are amazing. They're so good at that. But when it comes to chronic disease, unfortunately, we've been told by regulatory bodies and by guidelines that giving prescription drugs is the best way to manage them. And the reality is those drugs don't really treat the root cause.
Right.
They're just kind of symptom
maskers.
managed. Exactly. And so, but now, and it was fair, it was not an unreasonable solution, but now we're kind of at this place where we actually have real solutions to get people better using these specific cell therapies and put them into remission, or actually, I don't like to say cure, but at least remission, right? Where their disease is controlled. And so they don't necessarily have to be on pain meds. And so I think people need to, and this is, I'll give an example, like lupus is a terrible condition. And again, the only way they can traditionally manage it, it's an autoimmune condition, is usually some sort of immunosuppressant.
Right.
And so,
which brings with it all sorts of other risks, like chronic infection of other sorts.
Exactly. And so many other risks with it. And so there was a trial done in Germany where they used something called gene-edited CAR T cells. So what they do is they take your T cells out of your body, they add a chimeric antigen receptor, which basically allows these T cells to hone in and kill B cells, which become hyperproliferative in lupus. And so it's called CD-CAR19. It's a specific type of antigen that they add on to the T receptor. The gist of it is that what it does is just makes it hone in on the problem. So it's really fascinating because you're gene editing you're making these bespoke cells almost that are specifically designed to do a task. And these cells, they actually put everyone in the trial into remission. And even a year follow-up, even though their B lymphocytes went back up, patients were still doing well. Their symptoms didn't come back. So that just shows you the power of these next generation therapeutics.
So is that a widely used treatment now?
CAR T is approved by FDA. However, it's $500,000. And why is it so expensive? Because the pharmaceutical companies, a lot of them just, unfortunately, because it's patented and all this stuff, they just charge a lot of money. And so what we're doing is we're using our technology, which we can talk about, to create our own CAR T and hopefully offer it at 1/10 the price. And that's kind of the goal that we want to take, because it's not, like, very few people can afford that, obviously. But the point is you can make these customized cell therapies for different chronic diseases. And there's so many. It's going to be autoimmune conditions, cancer, and everything in the next few years is going to shift towards gene and cell therapy to actually cure people or put them in remission, as opposed to just giving them pills for everything.